just, kind of the thing I wanted to do, and just did it.
Perfect. Yeah, that's the thing, right? So what I talk about with a lot of people is that I think oftentimes they think because we're trainers that we have some type of like magical gift that we're given that no one else has, and that's why we can do the things we do. And I keep trying to explain to people, I think that there's just a level of passion that we have for what we're doing that allows us to push through the more uncomfortable things and the growth process that where a lot of people will stop short because it's kind of their hobby, when for us it's like, I have to do this because everything else will just make me miserable or make me feel like I'm living halfway if I don't. So I think it's that perseverance piece where you're like, I'll do whatever I have to do to be able to do this. And that commitment and that passion for it that actually allows so much more growth. And then also I feel like being able to work with so many different horses and so many different trainers. That was always huge for me. I always had so many mentors, and a lot of people just have one trainer that they go to and that's their end all be all. So do you have any mentors that you like really, really, enjoyed working with, or that stand out for you as someone that was really influential for you?
I will learn from anybody, even if it's what not to do, but so when you say the word mentor, the biggest one that comes to mind, and it could be because what you were just saying, but is actually a guy that I just watch his YouTube videos. He's not even a horse trainer, but he says, be a student, not a follower. So like with what you were just saying, like be a student, like just because I'm your trainer and I tell you this is how I do it, like assess it for yourself. Maybe you'll use it, maybe you won't. But I would say trainers that I've really liked is like, I like to read up on like Ray Hunt, and I've gone and watched some Buck Brannaman, and then one that I've met and I would consider kind of like a personal friend would be like Warwick Schiller. And when you say Buck Brannaman and Warwick Schiller, you're almost talking about two different ends of the universe. It's so different, but they're both making connections with horses. And so those are a couple guys I've spent more time looking into, and those would be a couple guys a lot of people know. The one I went and spent a couple days with, well, actually I just got back yesterday, was Mark Lyon. Mark Lyon is about as tough a guy as I've been around, and just showing me kind of how he does things. And right now I kind of consider him a mentor of mine. Just went to another friend, Aaron England, and I'm preparing for something. I'm preparing for Road to the Horse. So to go hang out with these different colt starters and kind of learn their ways has been cool. But in a lot of ways, when I think of a mentor type person, I almost think about the guys I follow on YouTube that talk more about the mental training of it, because the physical stuff, you can do it 1,000 different ways, but the mental side of it is what can keep you coming back. It's what makes you feel good or gets you down. And, that's where, to me, finding those mentor type people that, the one like speaker like Jocko or like Joe Rogan, or I said Jim Rohn, they're speakers, but they kind of help remind you what's inside of you, what you can do and how hard you can work. And so I haven't had the horse trainer mentors that a lot of people have. And I agree with what you're saying. Some people, they start with a person and they're locked in and not even realizing even that person's trying to learn more. We're all trying to learn more. So I kind of wish I would have had a mentor, but I guess not having one helped me to just pull from everyone and whoever I could, and YouTube videos and clinics, and just pull from everyone. So I haven't had a horsemanship mentor, and if I have, they didn't know they were. I just followed them and learned from them. So, but those are the ones that kind of come to mind.
Yeah, that's perfect. I think there's a lot to be said about that, because once I delved into the personal coaching side of things, it was kind of like I was starting all over, and it reminded me what it was like for people when you feel like you don't know, and you're like, I don't know how to coach people, but I've been doing it at some level for 15 years. But then when we were talking about, we're going to get into like you, not your horse, but you, I then had to look for the mentors that I was going to have in that direction. And it was the same, you know, the YouTube videos and that you just feed your brain with this stuff so that you can connect those dots and understand things at like a deeper level. Because I think there's way too many ways to look at like one thing. So the importance of keeping that open mind and knowing that you can go watch other trainers and you can go to clinics and whatever avenue you want to take, but making sure that you remember, you know, your horse and you know yourself, and always standing up for that. Because I even was talking to another trainer that's going to come on, and she had gone to a clinic and it was a very well-known trainer, and she was like, I knew for me and my horse that what they were asking me to do was not the right thing. She's like, but I was so stuck in that I need to listen to this person, and I went against what I knew was the right thing, and it ended up a big wreck. And she's like, so it's interesting that even us as trainers get into those situations where you're like not trusting yourself or doubting yourself and going, wait, I know, I know me and I know my horse, and I know this is not the right way to do this. So having a little bit of faith too in your own intuition and your own gut about things. I think people doubt themselves a little bit in that direction. So yeah, the value of that is pulling what you can learn and even what not to do, especially for people that are in boarding, because there's a lot of access to things that go on that you can learn like, nope, that's definitely not something they should be doing. So, you know,
and just to like say something on that, just to spitball as you're saying that, what I kind of think of is if you're that person at the boarding facility or whatever, and someone tells you what to do, and you know, like you've either tried it, like maybe you did it 5 years ago, and you're like, I know that doesn't work. That's terrible advice. But if you don't do it, now you're not open-minded. And those people, it's really hard. You know, people want to make you feel bad. Like, well, you're not open-minded. I tried to help her, but, you know, she just wants to stand around with the horse and do nothing. And I told her she needs to run that thing and whatever. And you're like, yeah, I could run my horse. I could make my horse move, but I'm, you know, at this stage, I'm building a connection. I'm not trying to move their feet or whatever you're trying to do. And you know it, but it's hard, especially if you go to someone's clinic and they're like, hey, do this. And you're thinking, well, I can do whatever I want at home, but when I'm in front of this person, I should probably do what they say because, you know, that's kind of where I'm at. So that gets really hard. And sometimes standing up for yourself, you're going to get name called and you're going to get, they're not open-minded and this and that. And, you know, sometimes that's part of this whole deal is being able to take people saying that and say, yeah, you know, you're right. I'm not open-minded, but I'm just going to follow this rabbit hole. You know, this is what I'm working on and I'm just going to do my deal and stay confident, but also kind. And that can be a struggle sometimes.
Right. Yeah, definitely. You were talking about how you're preparing for the Road to the Horse, and how many of these competitions have you done, do you think? Do you know a number, or is it just now like kind
of? Actually, very few. Yeah, in terms of colt startings, let me think. I'm going to say one. That's it. I've done one, and I wouldn't really call myself a competition colt starter. I got asked to do this, and it's really funny. Like, I'm big into manifesting, and I think I'm a very powerful manifester. I think in some ways I manifest things on accident. So I had in my brain for months, I've been thinking about Road to the Horse, but I also wanted to get more efficient at colt starting. I was not the guy 6 months ago that you sent a colt to and he got on it that day, and normally not even that week. It wasn't my priority. I had other things I wanted to do before I got on, and I wanted to get more efficient. I wanted to get, you know, to be that point of at least understanding how a guy can get on one the same day they need it. And it really brought into my life, to me, Road to the Horse, which is an opportunity that caused me to do that. I had to become that guy. Otherwise, I don't think I would have pushed myself. I don't think I would have sought the people that could teach me how to get on a colt right away and what, you know, kind of simplify it down of this is how to be successful at it. So it was really interesting, you know, even though I haven't done many, I really am a critical thinker, and I watch and I try to really learn from observation as much as I can. That way I don't have to be the guy that gets bucked off. I can learn from the guy that got bucked off or whatever. But it's really interesting how I felt like I manifested Road to the Horse into my life through different thoughts I had over several months. And it created something in my life that I was really looking for.
Right. So for the people that don't know, what the Road to the Horse, what does that competition look like? Like, what are the parameters that you're working under? Like, what are the rules? What is the setup for that?
Okay, so it's 4/6 geldings. They're 3 years old. They were, I think they were all halter broke as weanlings and then kicked back out. You know, they've got to shoot. If they need to bring them in, do vet care, whatever, they do that. They bring them for the competition. The first session, you've got an hour and 45 minutes with 15 minutes mandatory breaks. So you have an hour and a half working time with the horse. You do another one of those. The second session, you're allowed to ride them out of the round pen. And then your third session, you've got 20 minutes in the round pen and I think 35 minutes out of the round pen. And so you ride your horse, you know, on the rail. You got to walk, trot, lope both ways. You got to do a 180 both ways. You got to stop and back up, you know, and it can be like at a walk. You got to get off and lead your horse, pick up all 4 feet. When you finish all your rail work, you do a kind of crazy obstacle course. It's more scary stuff than technical. So you're going over poles or weaving a little thing with, you know, some confetti in it. But it's a colt starting competition, and it's kind of to see how good you can get one in a short amount of time. And you can work them from another horse. But every round is judged. So they take everything you do into consideration.
Right. And how does one mentally prepare for something like that? Because I feel like for me, I think of when I start horses, it's such like a process for me that I go through. And over the years, obviously it's gotten much faster, but I always know that that day, like it doesn't matter. And like, it doesn't matter. And I think that's why it progresses so fast. But then when you're in a situation where you're like, it actually does matter. Like, how do you get yourself mentally like in a place where you can do that and stay? I mean, I guess it still doesn't really matter at the end of the day, right? But there is a bit more pressure.
Yeah. So, and it's, you got to have results right there. And that's one of the things I love about a competition like that. It's got a time frame. Results matter. And, you know, there's a lot of times, you know, when results don't matter and we don't push ourselves or we don't push our horse. And so I do love it for that aspect. Mentally, I don't know. I don't think about it much, you know, like I think I try to have things I pull confidence from. So there's going to be points I need or things I need a horse to do in order for me to get on it. And once I have those, I get on it. And I mean, I guess it could buck you off, but that's what your groundwork's for. And so mentally preparing, I have to think, I think I'm just kind of one of those guys that wings it a lot. So for me, there's not a lot of mental preparation. It's just like, yeah, let's do it. I'm excited. Let's roll. And then when I get there, I might think about it a little more. But I think more or less, I just live my life and wait for it to show up, you know, just do my deal day in, day out. And I guess I would be constantly assessing colts I guess that's where a lot of my preparation is. I just assess colts. I put them in situations, what worked, what didn't, what personality horse was I working with, how old were they, you know, what caused all the different things to happen, so that when I go somewhere like that, I just pull from experience at that point, you know, what things I've learned, I just pull from that and then just do my deal.
So it's interesting because in the masterclass, we're talking about the 6 human needs, and it's a Tony Robbins thing. And there's 4 that are of the personality and then 2 of the spirit. And so I know a lot of the people in there, they have certainty very high on their list. And so you would obviously be one that is the uncertainty, the thriving on the uncertainty of things, like is, which is where I am now. Like I bounce back and forth, but in the beginning it was like certainty was so high, and it's good for people that are in there to see you and hear you and go, oh, that's how the other people live. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. It's going to be amazing, whatever it is. Because that certainty piece will really lock you in and hold on pretty tight, and it leaves you very like, very restricted. So being able to just go, I just know I'm going to show up and it's going to work out how it's going to work out, and every moment's going to happen, and I'm going to adjust as I go, and the outcome's just going to be what it's going to be, and it'll be perfect.
Yeah. And I mean, I think if you go through enough scenarios where you worried about the outcome and then it always works out, like for me at least, it didn't take many scenarios of that where I was finally like, what was I worried about? Well, like I'm not going to worry, because it actually just made it worse. Like it made leading up to it not good. So it almost turned a good thing into a bad thing. Like if I had a big show coming up, like if I was going to a big show and I was stressing in the preparation and I wasn't really happy till after the show, I'd almost feel like I gave up some of my time or happiness for something that never existed. Like it's really an interesting concept. So I think I used to care more, and then enough times where nothing went wrong. And it's almost like a horse with a tarp. If this was the tarp for me, I'm the kind of horse where you wave the tarp at me 4 times, and by the 5th time, I'm like, well, I guess it didn't hurt me. Whereas some horses, you can wave it 1,500 times, and they're still like, I think that thing might eat me. So some people may never get over it, even if it goes well. But I'm just like, well, 5 times, I guess we're good. That thing's fine.
Yeah. It's just interesting, the personality differences and how people kind of go there. I feel like what I've been diving into a little bit, and so I'm curious to see what your thoughts on it, because I actually haven't asked anybody yet, is the level at which I feel like people create the emotional stuff within their own horses. So for someone who comes to the barn and is always in just this low level of stress, whatever they're bringing to the barn with them, either it's to escape whatever they're dealing with or however they use the barn, and they show up and their horse looks at them and goes, okay, here they come. And then all these studies coming out speaking to the fact that horses actually do have the capacity to like remember and learn and attach an emotion or a state of mind to certain faces and people and situations. And then they kind of armor up and get ready for that. In correlating it with the way that so many horses have ulcers. And I know partially that is how they're kept, depending on the situation. But for the most part, I think, especially in California, horses are kept in stalls. They get fed twice a day. They're grained really heavily. They're hardly ever out because people don't want them to get hurt, etc. So on top of the fact that they're almost taking on some of our stress, and then in addition to being kept not in an ideal way for a herd or a grazing animal to be, I feel like I'm making connections with certain illnesses, especially ulcers, with horses because of that. And I feel like humans, the way they process that stuff, digestive stuff, whatever, it's a lot of easier for us to take that on and not show up with ulcers. But I feel like horses take that stuff on, and that same cortisol and adrenaline is getting pumped into their body. But because the way that they're kept and the way that their digestive system is set up, they end up with ulcers. And I'm starting to believe that it's partially due to us. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big believer in, if I have a horse that just starts acting funny, I'll normally treat him for ulcers. It's always been the way I've done it. It's always been pretty cheap. So I just do that. And so in terms of that, I think if you show up at the barn in a certain emotional state, I think your horse probably has 3 options: kind of feed off of it, kind of buy into it, go that direction, or do nothing, or go the opposite direction. So, certain horses aren't going to feed off of your emotions at all, and certain ones will feed off of them highly. And I think, memories are really tied to emotions. And I think a lot of times what we remember isn't the thing, it's actually the feeling. And then most of us rewrite the story in our mind as we feel the feeling. And so, I'd watched a thing once where every time you remember something, your brain changes it. So that's why there's no point arguing with your husband or wife about something, because you both probably keep changing every time you remember it. So, but in terms of the ulcers, I would say our horses don't have all of the different outs that we do. And so if they have an interaction with us and they just sit in their stall the rest of the day, you know, that's kind of the biggest thing that happened to them all day. I mean, maybe if they had an interaction, then you turned them out and they spent the day with other horses, that would kind of go away. But if you leave them in a poor emotional state and it just kind of festers there, like, it's kind of the whole deal. You reap what you sow, which really you reap more than you sow. And if you leave your horse in a bad place, the next day they're going to be worse. And sometimes if you leave them in a good place, the next day they're even better. So, you know, that Warwick Schiller says, don't go to bed angry. And I think that's a big thing. You don't want to leave your horse in a poor emotional state, and you sure don't want to show up and be in one, because you're supposed to be the leader. So if they really respect you as a leader, they're probably really going to feed off of your emotional state. If they really don't respect you as a leader, they're probably going to ignore your emotional state, you know, unless you do something to cause them to be like you. I mean, if you're mad and your horse is really dull and you really get after them that day, you're going to kind of bring them to where you are. And then they might start associating that with, when you're in that state, you know, they've got to do something or you're going to get after them, or, you know. And I do think absolutely horses are way more sensitive to that stuff than us. And then they're probably more sensitive digestively, because I don't think a horse could live off of Velveeta macaroni and cheese. I mean, I've seen what it does to the pot after you cook it, so I don't even know how we live off of it. So they're probably not as sensitive as we are. So, you know, their ulcers, it happen pretty easy, I would guess.
Yeah, I just keep realizing and seeing correlations with even any chronic illness, ailments, and seeing people actually shift and having their horses actually shift at the same time. So I've had some interesting conversations with some chiropractors and vets and stuff about it. And it's just something that I was like, I wonder if anyone else ever thinks about that. So I was just curious.
Yeah.
So for you, if you know that, because you're human, if you know that you're showing up to the barn and maybe you're not in like the best place, do you actively catch yourself, or have there been moments where you just went in and did your thing and then something happened where you were like, oh shit, here I am?
Oh, well, I like to really observe myself. So if I go to the barn and I already know I'm in a poor mood or whatever, I think the best thing I could do is not go there. Unfortunately, that's where I work. So I don't really have the option to say, well, I'm going to take the day off because I kind of woke up on the wrong side of the bed. So a lot of times just being really aware of what you're doing will help you to not do the wrong thing. It gets really tough because horse training takes a lot of patience, and sometimes you might need to take 5 minutes and go do something else, or maybe I'll just make sure I don't work a certain horse first or last, or, you know, try to start off on the right foot. But I think if you're consciously aware of where you're at mentally, you won't make as many of those big mistakes. Like if you just let yourself go through the motions, pretty soon you're pulling and kicking a little harder than you should, and you're going the wrong way. And now, you know, you got to do damage control over the next week or two, because, you know, especially the greener the horse is, the more you're going to have to do. And that maybe if they're a little older, they might forget by the next day, because they're really forgiving animals. So I would say the best thing a person can do, be aware of what you're doing. I read a book about that once, and just like being aware, even if you're mad, if you think on the inside, you know, I'm really mad right now. You know, what that person said or what that horse did made me mad. And you think about it and you say, okay, I'm mad. And what's really funny is when you accept that you're mad, you don't normally react the way that you do when you're fighting that you're mad. You just say, well, I'm mad right now, and, you know, I'm not going to let myself do certain things, but it's there. And it's really weird. What some people should just try it. Just be aware of where you're at and just see what happens after that, really.
Yeah, it's that whole what you resist will persist. It's like the denying it or the pushing it away, or like, I'm not going to look at it right now, almost makes it worse. And it comes out in your actual actions, and I think in your decisions of what you're doing, rather than just saying it and going, this is where I'm at right now, and accepting it and going, I'm a human being, there I am. Calling it out. We talked a lot about the first week about awareness of that stuff, because sometimes I think people cruise along and they're not aware of how they actually even feel about things. They just do life and things kind of are happening to them, they feel, and they're just reacting and being defensive and like, oh, well, life just keeps throwing this stuff at me, instead of going, wait a minute, like, what am I actively choosing to feel right now that's making me feel that way? And instead of shifting your perspective about things, just staying stuck in that space of like, there is nothing you can do about it. You're just kind of a victim of life happening at you. So for people, so when you have a client and they come to you and say you've started their horse for them and they're going to like ride it for the first time, or if they've come with a problem horse and you're letting them get back on for the first time, is there any like thing that you tell every single one, or is there certain tips that you give them to make them, if they've already had bad experiences with that horse, or if they have just insecurity about getting on the horse for the first time and you don't want that to feed into it, is there anything that you do for them before that situation arises to help support them?
Well, sometimes I might, if they're really lacking in confidence, I guess first thing I do is assess what I've got. It's like training a horse, working with people. You got to know what you're working on. Or like if you're a doctor and you're giving someone a prescription, you got to know what they're sick with. And if you don't know that, well, it doesn't matter. You don't want to write them prescriptions for all these things they don't need. So depending on the person, you might have one person where you're saying, hey, kind of take it easy on this horse and, be pretty light, because, this guy thinks he's a cowboy and he's going to get up there and yahoo and whip and spur and he's going to get her done. You might tell him, hey, this horse is kind of this way and you have to take it easy. And then you might have someone who's really timid and scared. And before too long, that horse is going to start taking over because it doesn't have a leader up there. So for them, you might just give them exercises like, hey, let's work the hind end, now the front end, now check that out. And if they're not real confident, you can do things at a walk, get in control of that horse's hind end, front end, moving them over, backing them up. And as you see that person's confidence build, you see them start to be like, oh man, I got this. And you start kind of build it with them. And so depending on the person, I'm very kind of timid. I kind of hold back. I want everything to be safe and I want to make sure, the horse is ready, the person's ready. So whatever I got to do to kind of build their confidence and make this whole deal successful. At this point, I know the horse. I probably kind of know the person, and I'm reading their body language. I mean, when a person's scared of getting on a horse, it's pretty easy to tell. They'll let you know. They'll say, are you sure you want me to ride him today? Are you sure? And you're like, well, then you got to kind of assess that and decide where you're going to go. And no, if that person's scared, I'm not sure I want you on this horse that's very green, because he needs a leader right now. He doesn't need someone up there shaking and wondering what to do. So I just assess the deal. Sometimes I wish I had a program and I could say, get on, do steps A through Z, and man, this is going to go good, but it just doesn't work that way for me. So I'm always big on reading the situation, figuring out what works best. If it didn't work, go back to the drawing board, try something different. And then, as you start to pair up these horses and people, you can know what's going to work most of the time. And if it doesn't, you just roll with the punches, you find something new. But the only way you're going to figure out what works and what doesn't is doing it. So you've got to do it and go on with something, pick something, take a route, and you can change the route. But if you never pick a route, you're really going to struggle.
Yeah, I see so many, I see a lot of trainers, and I don't know if it's because it's their own fear or their lack of anything beyond, but they'll be really stuck on having people do groundwork forever. And I feel like forever. And I understand, but it's that balance of, okay, your horse is safe. It's maybe never going to be perfect, but if the horse is relaxed and not going, to take off bucking with you or whatever, get on and just see what happens. I feel like a lot of trainers really stay stuck and nope, it has to be perfect. Everything has to be lined up. Step A through, D has to be exactly perfect before you even get near the horse. And I feel like it's the same. I have a lot of people come and go, well, I've been doing groundwork for the last year. And I'm like, well, do you want to ride? It's like, well, yeah, so get on. Like, who cares? Like, just cruise around and happens and everything. it's interesting that some trainers get very stuck there, and then some go the other way and they don't ever do groundwork. They don't even believe in it. They think it's ridiculous. Um, for you, do you feel like it's like a combination of both? Like, do you go either way, or it sounds like you kind of do a little bit of both?
Yeah, yeah. So the deal with people is people love black and white. They want to know, is it this way or is it this way? Well, it's right here. Well, they don't understand that very well. So they normally need one or the other. They need you to black and white it for them, let them know. And that's why certain people follow certain training systems, because when you follow this person's system, it tells you exactly what to do and when to do it. And at some point, they normally outgrow it and they realize that's not the case with horses. But you know what? That trainer's done a really good job helping a lot of people get to the level where they can do their own thing and read a horse and figure something out. But for me, there's certain things I need from a horse in the groundwork. I need their hind end to be under control. If I pick up the lead rope or the rein and I can't move their hind end, well, I could get bucked off pretty easy. So I need that. I also need them to willingly move. And once they have control of their hind end, they willingly move. They're not scared of me. They're not scared of the saddle. Well, you don't need a lot more. I mean, if you're scared of them, getting a pen small enough, the fences are going to stop them before they go anywhere, and you're okay. But I like groundwork, but most people won't do it. So my goal is normally to get a horse to the point where you can throw a saddle on and get on and go ride, because most people don't understand the groundwork. They don't have the feel. Before too long, they're confused. The horse is confused. And so if I can get the horse where it doesn't need groundwork, but if a guy got a hold of the lead rope that knew what they were doing, they could do the groundwork, awesome. That's what I want. But most people aren't going to do it anyways. So, and I always do groundwork. I mean, I'm not going to start a colt without groundwork. But there comes a point where you probably don't need it, but you still might use it now and again to fix certain issues, because it's easier to fix from the ground, or some things are easier to fix from their back. So I would say I use both, and I just, figure out what I need, and that's what I do.
Yeah, that's perfect. And so if you could think of just one, I know there's a lot, like a main lesson that you feel like you've learned from horses that you've been able to apply to either, relationships in your life or just to life in general, like what do you think that would be, or what would that look like?
Well, for anybody out there taking notes, write this down. Get to the finish. Get to the goal line. Have goals or whatever, but get there. Like, I was a perfectionist, bad. I mean, it was crippling. I couldn't, it was a handicap to be a perfectionist, and it still would be if I still was. You have to let go of perfect, but you have to do well, and you want progress. So there's a balance. I'm not telling you to suck and finish everything. Find the gray area in the middle. You want to get better, but make sure you're not being held back by wanting to be perfect. Like you were saying, don't stay in the groundwork because it's not perfect. Like, you got to get on eventually. And so there's certain things, like, say a person wants to start their own colt and they want to take it on and they want to show it in the ranch horse shows or the reining or the cow horse. Do it. Are you going to ruin your horse? In a lot of ways, absolutely. Are you going to take it to someone like me or Amber and they're going to say, yeah, your horse is doing this wrong and that wrong? Absolutely. And in the process of making that horse, you will learn how to do better. And when you get another one and you make that one, are you going to ruin that one? Absolutely. In very small ways. People think they're going to ruin their horse. And I tell them, you're not going to ruin your horse. Is somebody going to have some criticism for you? Absolutely they will. Could I go look and watch someone really, like, the best in the world? Could we go watch their run and critique it and show you things that are wrong? Always. There will always be things wrong. But don't let making mistakes hold you back. That's actually where you learn. The learning opportunities are in doing something and it not working. And you say, I've been trying to get my horse to do a sliding stop for a year, and hopefully you don't wait that long, but you've been trying, and you finally go to someone and they tell you why. Well, you've been trying to stop it out in your pasture. The ground's terrible. It probably tried to stop twice and it said, no way, I'm never stopping on this ground. And So you'll learn why it didn't work or what you need to do different. And, and honestly, you and the horse will get so much experience in the process. It'll be pretty cool. And you'll probably look back and laugh at half of it. And a lot of the mistakes I've made, I laugh at, because it's like, don't think you're not going to make mistakes. Don't think you're going to be perfect. You're going to make mistakes. There's going to be things go wrong. But if you go start entering shows this year, you will be that much better next year. And if you keep entering next year, you will be that much better the year after. So if you have a 3-year plan, you're not going to enter shows for 3 years. You're holding yourself back. Don't be afraid to suck. Don't be afraid to lose. Go do it, learn from it, and go on, because this year's not going to matter that much in 5 years or 10 years. But it will matter if you're making progress. It's going to make all the difference if you start now, start making the small mistakes, fix them, and move on.
That was perfect. Well, out of respect for time, then I think that's the ideal thing to go out on, unless there's something else that you want to add before we get off that's come up.
No, I mean, I'm pretty good. I could talk all day. So, I hope people got something out of this, and, they keep working with you and all the people you're finding to really help them, because, we're all human, and, just having fun and working with horses, and it's very rewarding. So, I appreciate you having me on here, and I hope people got something out of it.
I'm 100% sure they did. So thank you so much for spending the time with us. And we look forward to seeing you at your Road to the Horse competition. We'll be rooting for you.
All right. Thank you, guys. Have a good one.
All right. Bye-bye.